the governance side of things is more about safety standards so that people
Mm.
can see that we're being safe. And insurance, unfortunately, is like one of those necessary evils in the States. I've learned way more about insurance than I ever hoped to in this job. It's not my favorite part of it, but it's very necessary because all the gyms want the cheapest insurance. And so we're looking at ways that we can kind of create more of a risk protection group that people fall under so that it changes the industry's perspective. Because right now, I can guarantee you that most insurance companies, it's some middle-aged white guy sitting at a desk that's an underwriter that is looking at risk analysis, and he's running the formula just going like, oh my God, has no idea what the maybe what parkour is, Googles it and just sees one of those people are awesome videos, and it's just people all doing roof gaps and just the craziest highest level parkour stuff that you can think of.
Mhm.
And then just goes nope, they like tick a box and just say like that's the most dangerous shit I've ever seen, and they give us the highest premiums.
Oh my God.
um and that's
That's hilarious.
understandable, but
Yeah, yeah, I love how
but
that's how like it looks. I mean, obviously it works against us in many ways, but also I think it's hilarious that at face value, it is one of the most insane things you'd ever see a human being do, you know.
yeah, I think that's also a big thing, you're talking about kind of contentious is like we also have to take a step back with USPK and say like we want to serve the existing community as best as we possibly can and take feedback from everyone, create competitions that people enjoy, allow for that maximum creativity. But we also have to take a step back and project what parkour is to the outer world, because I think we can get very community centric and kind of stay in our own little bubble. And we also need to be that first kind of introduction for a lot of people that are interested in parkour. And for the new generation, that's kids are interested because they see it on YouTube and they see the crazy shit and go like, yes, I want to do that. That looks awesome.
Mhm.
And then, but from a parent's perspective, they're looking at it going like, okay, where can I safely teach my kid this? And so they want to know, and that's what we want to start reflecting on our website a bit more as we kind of update it, is that like parkour is actually super safe. We want to prove to insurance companies that the injury rates are actually consistently much lower than soccer or football. It's a non-contact sport. We teach from pretty much day one, responsibility, individualistic responsibility. Nobody's going to make you do that jump, right?
Mhm.
You decide at the end of the day. And so you have to know your capabilities to get that point.
Yeah. That is why it's so funny,
So
because obviously it looks like it's probably the most dangerous thing, but it's because it's one of the safest things that you can get it to look so dangerous. Because if it
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
so within your control, you wouldn't be able to take risks like that without being completely insane. And there's just not that many insane people in the world for us to
exactly.
for us
Yeah,
to
I
all be
think I
doing
think
that.
that's maybe we need to do more spotlights of like everyday parkour people for the rest of the world, of just like how these people are very normal. They're not like at work just like flipping tables and stuff like that. Like they're very like mild mannered in their day activities, but then they can go and do these things because they've drilled that, they've practiced that mental mindset, they've practiced the physical skills.
Mm.
But to show that's why I think those breakdowns are really important. And I still think it's important to, Jimmy the Giant is talking about save your clips and showing your progression videos. I do. I think all of those are super important. Show the next generation who's coming up how they can get into this and how they can get to that level, that there is kind of that pathway, not in the gymnastics sense of like we're going to drill this into you and you're going to do this from free and go to the Olympics, but more of a like here's how you can start to control your body and start to level those things up. And it is in a very safe way, and parents feel good about like getting their kids into that. And I think the other really unique thing about parkour that we need to leverage, especially within the sporting world, is the fact that we're the most accessible sport on the planet. And it was actually the head of USA Skateboarding that said that to me. As
Mm.
I joked about there not being enough money in parkour and how skateboarding has all this merchandising and all of that stuff. And, that we call it parkour, as a joke. And he was just like, yeah, man, I totally get that. But at the same time, you guys have the most accessible sport in the world. Like you don't need a board. You barely even need shoes. You can
Yeah,
train barefoot if you want. He's like, that is powerful. And the other thing is that you can transition that to other sports. And so I've,
absolutely.
I've had folks from USA Youth Soccer come up and talk about like, yeah, like we should do a crossover at some point where we train the kids how to fall, because that happens all the time in soccer. And kids, you know, when you're playing soccer, you don't really learn how to fall correctly. You're just like, go after the ball, you know, dribble, shoot, touch drills, all of those different types of things. But very rarely are they learning how to fall, disperse that momentum, and get back up and run. And so I was like, yeah, that's, you know, that's where we want to be, is kind of the hybrid that could lead into other sports. So that, yeah, if your kid is in parkour and you still go and do soccer season after kind of the competition for parkour season is over, you're taking those skills with you, and you're going to keep coming back to parkour because it's what you love. So
yeah, it is. I've always thought of it as like, it's a very fundamental, I think of it, my head always goes to the Matrix.
Yes.
And then, where he's like downloading all the files, and it's like, oh, he's learning jujitsu and he's learning whatever. And I'm like, parkour should be like right up there at the top of the list of programs, because it does have the most broad reaching applications, you know, other than strict 100%. Combat. So I've always thought that, yeah, it's definitely one of the most accessible and crossover rich things to train in.
Yeah. I think that's some of the future too. Some of the folks, you know, that are part of USPK, you know, have really looked at getting into schools. And I think that like APK is doing a super good job of that. They've put, you know, 20,000 kids, I think at this point, through a public school parkour program, and that's taught in middle school. So instead of doing dodgeball, they're doing parkour. They have some basic precision and vault box setups. And it's like, yeah, that's the future. Parkour could absolutely be in schools. And I think that like it's, you know, we could be a generation or two out from like everyone having at least some basic parkour skills. And that's pretty radical to like think about. If you think about like what everyone's just in control of their body a little bit more, and your vision changes, you know, that's one of the cool things about parkour is you start looking at walls differently. You look at, you know, your surroundings. For me, it was like me in my suit going to the FBI headquarters in downtown DC, you know, being completely normal on the metro, but like looking and just being like, I could do that. And then tack off of that and then do that. You know, I'm like tracing my route. How would I get to work the most efficiently if I actually had to just run it? And, you know, I think that's like having an entire generation of that would just be like ridiculous. Like that would be so cool to see someday.
Yeah. They'd have to remake a bunch of prisons and, whatever else. I don't know. I'm just trying to think.
Wasn't that a thing for a bit? Wasn't there a group in Seattle that was like doing like penetration testing for prisons?
I hope so. I've always wanted to do that. That's a dream. I think the store guys just announced that they had somebody that was going to hook them up to do something like that as well. And yeah, that is just like a dream come true. There was like an old TV show that was like, there was two dudes that they didn't know parkour, but they would practice breaking into places. But it takes a lot more skills than just jumping. Jumping can get you into a lot of really interesting places. And though, if you don't know how to pick a lock or do probably some stuff that you have known to do,
maybe that's my crossover calling at some point when I retire from USPK.
You got actually maybe a bigger map of like, okay, these are like the Batman skills, you might say. You know, these are like everything that Bruce Wayne had to learn. He had to learn some combat. He had to learn how to fly around and jump through things. And he also, you know, from what I understand, I'm not actually the biggest nerd. I sound like it, so I'm drawing all these you know, comic analogies.
I'm a huge nerd.
I am a nerd, but I'm mostly a nerd about parkour. I'm not really – I might be more of a nerd than I even know about Batman. But, you know, he's apparently a really good hacker. From what I understand through the novels and through the movies and graphic novels. So you got a pretty good Bruce Wayne set going for yourself, it sounds like. I might have to get more skills on the computer. What?
That's where I like got into it. You know, I think that's a lot of folks' reasons for getting into parkour is like a lot of us grew up on comics and superheroes and stuff like that. And like when people are like, yeah, why would you want to join the FBI? There's so many rules and you have to keep squeaky clean. And I was like, yeah, I always had this weird delusion that I could like save the world, you know? So I was like, that's how you can learn some of those skills to do those sorts of things. And so it's just been, kind of trying to consistently find those things and level up where possible. And now it is kind of interesting because it's, your version of that changes as you mature as an adult,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, I'm not going to do it as Batman probably, but if I could change the world by getting every single kid to have basic parkour skills and teach some of this other stuff, and hopefully prevent cyber war from breaking out all across the world, then like great, like that's as close to Batman as you can probably get in real life. So